Get in here, get in here, get in here. We have a lot to talk about. Donald Trump is desperate. Now, if you are watching this kitchen podcast, which I haven't done for a while, I know, I'm sorry, on a short form platform like TikTok or Instagram or YouTube Shorts, you're only going to see the first 3 minutes of this. If you want to see the rest of the tea, and my thoughts on these various different issues, head over to my YouTube channel and check it out there. At some point, when I figure out the thumbnail, I'll put it here. If you are watching this, or here actually, if you are watching this on Substack and you remember my paid community, you can see the rest of it on Substack. Now, without further ado, we have a lot to talk about. He's desperate. Donald Trump is so desperate because he knows the clock is ticking on when the Democrats are more likely than not are going to take over the House and the Senate, both houses of Congress, in the fall. What happens after that is essentially the Democrats get control of all the chairman roles. They control the agenda. The House Speaker of the House is going to be a Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries or whoever they nominate. The majority leader in the Senate is no longer going to be John Thune. It's going to be whoever that is. Most maybe, I don't know who that is. Maybe Charles Murphy or whatever. I don't know. Whoever's in seniority. Now, I gotta talk about Mitch McConnell. Now, what happens is they also get what's called subpoena power, meaning that they can call someone in on the penalty of perjury to testify what they know. And depending on what they say, if they contradict something that's part of an investigation or an oversight hearing or criminal referral or civil action after Trump is out, after his DOJ gets out of there, they say something, they can be criminally prosecuted for perjury based on what they say if they lie. So if they tell the truth, then they tell the truth. There's been a lot of hijinks going on. They don't want to testify under the penalty of perjury. That's why Pam Bondi didn't want to do it. That's why it's a big deal to testify. I don't know if you understand. It's a big deal to testify under oath. And they get the authority, the ability to do that. Control the agenda, testify. So that's fearful. I mean, if they get a big enough lead, Operation 2/3 is my one-woman campaign to get a 2/3 majority, veto-proof, meaning like Donald Trump can veto it with 2/3 majority. They can impeach, convict, remove him and his entire administration. That's going to take about 20 U.S. senators, Republican senators, to lose their seat. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's a pipe dream. A girl can dream. But it's still a bad thing. He's so scared about that, what's coming out. The grift is over. He's doing everything in his power to suppress the vote, suppress the Democratic vote, because all of this thing about voter fraud, that is a facade. The Heritage Foundation, the architects of Project 2025, did a longitudinal study over 24 years. They found like about 100 instances of voter fraud. That's a less than 0.30%. That's less than 1%. So you don't try to, it's essentially the whole voter fraud thing is a solution in search of a problem. It's not a problem. I always tell this, if you are in this country on tenuous circumstances, when you are responsible for lots of people, maybe a whole village back home, and you're sending money back home, you're not going to do something like vote. No one's going to convince me to sacrifice my family to vote and potentially get caught when you can't even get American citizens to vote. In my state, Maryland, I didn't confirm this, but I heard someone say, I read somewhere that our voter turnout was 16%. So it doesn't even make sense. Even like logically, it doesn't even make sense that there's all this. It's a facade. So they need to do everything to try to suppress the vote. So the latest thing they're doing is, I read that they sent their Department of Justice, I think, sent a letter to all of the state representatives in charge of voting and said they're going to criminally prosecute them if any non-citizen vote. That's just an intimidation tactic, because they don't have the authority. There's no voter fraud. They're just messing up. Essentially, they're just trying to threaten them that they're going to bring up something on them. Like if you have anything in your, essentially what they're saying is a threat. They're saying if you have anything in your past that you did or whatever, that we're coming for you. That's what it looks like to me. You know what I mean? Because Donald Trump is like a mob boss. You know, that's all they do. They're trying to shake people down. All of his legal lawfare is just shaking people down for money. That's what he's been doing his whole freaking life. So that's the latest thing. The thing he did before was he created this save database. Sorry to you, blue dots and blue voters in these red districts. Your red state people, like Texas, all those, gave up your voter data to Donald Trump. He created this save database, and used it to essentially try to purge people from the data rolls, from the voter rolls. And what happened was they accidentally purged like a bunch of citizens. They knew very well. They had a memo that said this is not fail proof. We may actually remove people who are U.S. citizens from the voter roll. So they knew going into it was a problem, and it got struck and kicked out and said determined to be unlawful because it violates at least 4 privacy laws, including procedure laws. The way they set it up. So that's out of there. Of course, you see him going for the SAVE Act, which again is a voter suppression law, but putting in new burdens. And I've shared this on other social media platforms in written form, so I might as well go ahead and share it with you in video form. An example I use, and you can use this if someone ever says something about we need the SAVE Act, and I've heard the pushback say, well, if there's no voter fraud, what's the harm in having it? That's what they say. Your response to them is like, okay, imagine your employer tells you from now on, in order to get your paycheck cashed, you have to travel 50 miles to headquarters and cash it there. You can't cash it in your bank. You can't, no more security deposit, no more instant deposit. You now have to go to 50 miles. Now, they want to trim the staff. They want to get rid of people, but they don't want to say we want to get rid of people. But they're going to make it harder for people to get their checks. At some point, some people are like, you know what, this job is not worth it. Burning all that gas to cash this check. I can get this other job and they have direct deposit. I'm going to just quit. So now they've gotten rid of a bunch of people without actually having to fire them. That is what the SAVE Act does. It puts extra burdens, extra hurdles that are not needed because, again, there's no instances of voter fraud. It's very, very rare. And you give your ID when you register. And they check it with, there's no one's registering twice, they check it off. The system's a fail proof. That's why we don't have instances of it. So just like if you were working, no one ever created check fraud. But at some point, long time ago, one person or two person did it. Because one person or two person did it long time ago, they're gonna make thousands and thousands of employees have to now drive 550 miles to get a check because one or two people did it a long time ago, and there's no evidence of paycheck fraud. That's the same situation. Now, if you say, why don't you do it anyway? Okay, why don't you go ahead and travel 50 miles to go get your check? Do you want your employee to do that even though there's no evidence? No, you know that's ridiculous. You know that there's an alternative motive. So that's the example you give. And I've shared that on platforms. People say, oh, that's a good example. Back to the thing. So he's desperate. He's tried to commandeer the mail. He said he had his U.S. postal person say that they're going to start only deliver mail-in ballots from states who've like gone along with Donald Trump's voter thing. That was tossed out. You can't do that. That's a violation. He has said or hinted out there that they're going to send ICE to polling stations, which is intimidation. It's like that's the stuff they used to do to black folks in the South in the 60s. That is against the law. They had Todd Lyons was like, no, I'm not doing that. You had them go after, they sued 30 states because they asked everybody for their voter rolls. Like I said, sorry, you blue voters in these red states because they gave away your data. And sued them all, sued all the 30 because they said, no, we're not giving it to you. Of the 30, about 11 cases have moved to the judgment stages. And in 11 cases, the last one was Rhode Island. Before Rhode Island was Pennsylvania, which was the 10th, and Maryland was my state, and several other states. And every single state that gets their day in court are going to have the same result. And you would think they would just pull out those cases because it's a loser. It's a loser. It's 0 for 0. I don't even think they appealed them. So that is a loser. So that's his other hijinks that he tried to do. And I heard that Speaker Johnson, someone sent me a DM me a box that says Speaker Johnson is going to try to maneuver and get it done through some sort of budget process. And because the way they try to sneak it in last time is not going to work. And this close to election, there's no appetite for it because there are a lot of states and jurisdiction and seats that were solid red. And we see that there's been flips of the blue flips, even in cities, even in states, even in jurisdictions where Donald Trump won by 10, 20, 30, 40 points in 2024. Those people have abandoned him or going to the blue because they see what he's doing. So there are a lot of districts no longer safe. There's more toss-ups, more purple districts than there were ever before. So for them to have forced these people to vote for the SAVE Act before they set up for election, so there is no appetite amongst those Republicans that are in vulnerable districts to be forced to have to vote for this bill. So and then it's just something to give it to him. So that's the first thing. The Department of Justice is fractured. It right now is incompetent. It has a really bad reputation. There's no longer the presumption of regularity, which means I presume that they're acting good faith because they don't. They've been shaking down people who've made social media posts or sent emails critical of members of the Trump administration staff and going to their houses and knocking on doors. Hello, First Amendment. This man is authoritarian king wannabe. This is no longer the representative democracies that the founders imagined. And if you and the people who are MAGA consider themselves like advocates or proud people of the founders. They always have an American flag in their profile or eagle or saying USA, USA. But meanwhile, this man is doing everything that's affront to foundational development in the United States. And if you need a civics history lesson, by the way, on my website at jjlegal.com, head over there and hit the podcast button. I have a free 15-minute refresher. Watch it while you are cooking or folding laundry or driving someplace. There's a 5-question quiz at the end, and there's a take-home downloadable like form that you can just pull out for a refresher. And I think I'm gonna make it a series. My daughter narrated it. It was for anyway. So yeah, check that out. So that's the first thing for First Amendment. They're doing everything. It's an affront to democracy. And Donald Trump now, it's so interesting. During his 4th of July speech in front of the Mount Rushmore, he kept talking about communism, which is a new talking point because you all know they've been railing against socialism. And now I think with the success of Mondami and all his democratic socialists, it's not necessarily a good thing to go against socialism anymore because they see what the socialists are doing and they're like, okay, let's move on and find a new boogeyman. Like let's bring back the McCarthy era. Let's bring back the Red Scare. So there's communists all over the place. I don't think that's going to stick. And then you think about it, and you can ask the MAGA when they mention communism, like define communism. How is that different from socialism? How much they're not going to be able to. And you think about the principles of communism. One of them is where the government controls things that would normally be private sector. We are a capitalist society, but Donald Trump just recently, I think this week, was boasting about the return from the 10% interest he was able to shake down Intel to give to the United States government. He got TikTok to give the United States government 50% ownership. That's close to like North Korea, all these other places where the government controls the internet and they don't have freedom. U.S. Materials, he got 15% stake in them. U.S. Steel, he got a stake in them as well. He's trying to take it. That is not capitalism. And now he's going after the AI. So if you hear the talking points of communism, remind them that Donald Trump is looking more like a communist than you think. They're shutting down reporters and banishing political opponents. That's right up his alley. And now you have, and the people who prop him up, Mitch McConnell is one of them who propped him up. Mitch McConnell, from all reports, from what it looks like, is maybe possibly brain dead in the hospital. 3 days after he checked in the hospital, his wife left the United States and went to China and haven't been heard from since. And now you might see people like Scott Jennings and all these Republican leaders or senators or House of Representatives or governors tweeting out that they talked to him, which is ridiculous because according to like a leak, he looks like he wasn't talking to anybody. He looks intubated. So when it comes out, it leaks out that he was intubated at a specific time, after you're going to have all those receipts of all these representatives, including Scott Jennings, saying they spoke with him. Yeah, members of the media, anyone who goes on CNN or all those shows, when you see Scott Jennings, press him on that, especially when it's discovered later on that Mitch McConnell is being intubated. It's a lie. And it's also, every accusation is a confession with these people. Why? Because the Republicans were saying that there was a covert operation and Joe Biden wasn't really running things and it was this deep state and they were controlling things because he's incapacitated. Is this not what y'all doing with Mitch McConnell? And when you saw the pictures with Donald Trump's in Turkey and the leader has to he's wandering off and the Turkish president is moving him and maneuvering him and trying to get him to stay straight and he's looking all and you've seen he was asleep in the meeting with the guy. Donald Trump was asleep and there's been you've probably seen too many videos of Donald Trump falling asleep in front of the press, knocked out, just in REM sleep. And even in 2026, he was still using that Sleepy Joe line. It's you have no freaking self-awareness that you saying Sleepy Joe when there's about a dozen instances of you sleeping in front of the camera. He just had these people just prop him up, and they should know better. Todd Blanche is one. He's a sleazy. I mean, this is my opinion. He's a sleazy criminal lawyer. He's Donald Trump's previous criminal lawyer. He's the deputy AG. He's vying for the job. Meanwhile, 1,200 former Department of Justice employees, 1,200 wrote to the Senate and was like, please do not confirm this man. That is on top of the over 100 retired judges that wrote to the New York State Bar and said, we have concerns about this handling of like the Kilma Abrego Garcia case of the vindictive prosecution and violating other code of ethics laws related to legal practice in New York State. That is on top of a Judge Kathleen Williams in Florida who's currently investigating whether Todd Blanche committed what's called a fraud in a court, when you purposely use the judicial system to perpetrate some sort of fraud, and so you file a fake case with no intention of really following through. That's a fraud in the court. She's investigating that. That is on top of Judge Jim Boasberg, the chief judge in D.C., who is also considering whether Todd Blanche is part of a contempt. If you remember, they invoke a wartime law called the Alien Enemies Act to try to deport a bunch of Venezuelan young men who later discovered have no criminal background history. Only 5% of the men who they sent have a violent history. A lot of them were here on asylum. And in order to get to the United States or TPS status, you have to fulfill a background check. A lot of the men say we were not members of TDA. They did not really properly vet them. They just sent them off. That was a crook. And the Todd Blanche was a part of lying to DHS about what they could and could not do. And he's supposed to be the Attorney General, the top cop of the United States. And that's one of the, he's being investigated for that, considered contempt. So we'll see how that pans out. But there's more and more coming out about Todd Blanche. This Department of Justice, this government can't be trusted. We already know that Marco Rubio betrayed members of the members of the MS-13 who who were informants for the United States, and we promised them certain security. Marco Rubio betrayed that and sent some of them back to Nayib Bukele, part of that alien thing I told you. We already know about the reports about that. There's reporting on that. Now we're hearing that for Iran, they promised Iran to send asylees. If someone, we have the United Nations Convention Against Torture, there's an anti-refoulement clause, meaning if someone comes to your borders, escaping persecution from their homeland or someplace else, you have a duty as a signatory to the United Nations to not send them back. The American government has been doing that by sending them to third-party countries and paying these third-party countries, without really us having any say in it. Like our tax dollars didn't go for that. The Congress didn't allocate money to go to these third party countries. And a lot of them are developing countries that are dangerous and not even giving them instructions. Some of these developing countries are sending the people back. And those countries, by the way, they're also signatory to the UN Convention Against Torture. So Donald Trump and them paying them to take on their burden. But we see it. Whether you send them directly, indirectly, you're violating it. So to try to send people who left Iran and came here seeking asylum and say we're going to gather up the people who came here on the asylum list and give them back to Iran, there's no bottom with these people. But that's the news that's coming out. And their immigration thing is so crazy. I'm going to talk about this in another video about what they've done. It's going to be a short video about the pregnant women. Like, they are ripping United States citizen infants from their mother's bosoms, locking up their mother, denying their mother a bond hearing. A lot of these moms are either have married to U.S. citizens, a couple of them. They are refugees. They have active asylum cases. They have active work permit. If you have an active work permit and active asylum case, and you're in a system, you're not undocumented. You're not living in the shadows. They know where you are. You're not living in the shadows. You're not like trying to duck and bob and weave from ICE because you're going to your immigration check-in. A New York judge recently told the administration, you cannot be arresting people at their immigration check-in. Several judges have said that, but the record shows that they are ripping these babies from their mother's bosoms, tossing them in detention centers. And then when a judge says you can't do that, they're appealing. Oh, I was talking about the judge. The judge said, Listen here, you can't be arresting people at courthouse. Ban them from arresting people at courthouses in New York, and says that should be a nationwide ban because your own policy says something against that. There is actual law that says that you have to follow your own policies. ICE admitted that the memo, someone gave a memo. It was like a secret memo. They were hiding it. It turns out there's a memo where they kind of changed the rules and said, disregard it. You can actually arrest people at the immigration courts, which is against their policy. At some point, ICE actually admitted, yeah, that was a mistake. That was a bad memo. They admitted that they weren't supposed to be doing that. And that goes to all you people when they say they're going to the worst of the worst and they're going to undocumented illegals. That's why you're seeing these mothers and these spouses of U.S. immigrants. You're seeing these kids and these people who've been here for 20, 40 years, who are refugees, who have active status, who are student visa holders. They're rounding up everybody, not illegal people. They said ICE itself has said there's only like 30% of the people in ICE detention have a criminal background. So the New York judge, which is a George W. Bush appointee, by the way, said, you can't do this. Not in my state, not in my courthouse. You're not doing this. And it should apply nationwide. They got some of these women from the courthouses. They take their babies along them. They're ripping the babies. Last term, they took a woman. She was actively breastfeeding her baby, and they took her infant away from her. And I think they deported her. I'm not quite sure. So yeah, this is the type of people they're doing that. So there's a recent case, a new case. I'm talking about this in another video when they're doing that. So they're out of control. They're just doing whatever they want to, not following by the law. And every single person they've gone after, whether it's Letitia James, whether it's James Comey, whether it is Lisa Cook, whether it is Southern Poverty Law Center, and most recently the American Bar Association said that the Trump administration is slowing down in their giving us the files and things like that. What's going on? They're not processing. They're delaying, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm JJ Legal. If you're new, first time you're seeing me, what I do is monitor the lawsuits filed against the Trump administration and those the Trump administration filed against others, to give you a sense of calm, to let you know that the judges in the court system actually working to hold them accountable to the extent of really yanking them back. And these are judges that were appointed by Donald Trump himself, Ronald Reagan, and George W. Bush, and judges appointed by Barack Obama, Joe Biden, and Bill Clinton. So it's like it doesn't matter. If they're violating the laws, the judges will call them out on it. So much so, in terms of the detention, there's been 14,500 instances of migrants who, if they're able to get in front of a judge, the judge is saying, Donald Trump, you changed the immigration nationality policy, where we have traditionally said if we discover anyone who's been in the country for over 2 years, have no active removal order, have no criminal detainer, have no criminal background, you don't detain them. You give them what's called alternative to detention, or at least they're entitled to what's called a bond hearing, where depending on the circumstances, the judge can say, okay, we'll give you bonds, or we give you alternative, or we give you ankle monitor, or whatever. It's not automatically detaining them. They're automatically detaining people and depriving them of their rights, lying to some of them. I told you about the breastfeeding case. There's a woman who was entitled to a bond hearing, and they just deported her. They took her baby. She was nursing. She had an active work permit. She was in line for asylum. They just took her baby and deported her. And then she said, don't I have a right to hear? They said, no. We know the United States Supreme Court on a 9-0 basis. This curtain crazy United States Supreme Court, all 9 of them, said that immigrants and migrants, before you remove them, are entitled to habeas corpus, which is the basic form of due process. You don't get a free lawyer. You don't get all the extra stuff that U.S. citizens get, but you get at least a hearing to defend yourself against the allegations. They've been doing this. They've been lying to people to send them off because they're just freaking liars. And so 14,500 cases to like 1,000. And there's the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, I believe the Second, the Sixth, and the 12th in Florida Court of Appeals. And when they bring up these cases because the Trump administration appeal, all of those courts of appeals were like, no, that's not the policy. It doesn't even make sense. And I think maybe the Eighth Circuit agreed with the Trump administration, and so they've asked the Supreme Court to intervene because there's a split in the circuit. But I don't know. So they just doing whatever they want. The sycophants are just going along with it. Even FCC, this is a new thing. ABC is going hard. FCC is trying to call in the license early for ABC because of The View. and you get a license renewal for like 16 years. And so it's unheard of for them to call it a renewal unless you did something egregious. The only thing they did egregious is have a view on. That's crazy. So ABC is fighting back hard. They're like, we're not going to take this sitting down. They are fighting back hard. And it started with an ABC affiliate in Texas and Houston, and Brendan Carr is coming for them, which does not make sense because now that we know in the Slaughter case, the United States Supreme Court says the president has the executive authority and has the autonomy to decide whether he wants anybody from the other party in any executive agencies, any independent agencies. So that means the next Democratic president can have a completely Democratic FCC. If they wanted to be like vindictive, that Democratic president could say, you know what I need you to do? I need you to investigate Fox News for spreading misinformation, for not acting in the public needs and necessity, public interest standard, because they actually have brain rotted so many conservatives. Like they fed them to MAGA and they can't think anymore. They have no critical thinking skills. They just, in the cult matter, they shape shift. They abandon all of their morals and ethics and rules and code of conduct and code of acceptance and move it along. Wherever Donald Trump goes, they're shifting. They're shifting it depending on what Donald Trump says. That was enabled by Fox. That's a violation. Go ahead and go after them. So y'all just setting this up great for the next Democrat. Like you don't realize the stuff you're doing for Donald Trump. He's not going to be president forever. He's 80 years old. He's hanging on by a string. You've seen him like falling asleep, wandering all over the place. People have said all sorts of frontal lobe dementia. All the online doctors are diagnosed with all sorts of stuff. So we'll see how that turns out. I'll keep you updated. And it's just like, and they're not competent in the DOJ, as I mentioned. So there's a Department of Justice attorney left. When she left, she took allegedly this volume 2 of Jack Smith, who was the chief head prosecutor on the January 6th investigation, also on the taking the documents to Mar-a-Lago case. So he'd already released volume 1. Judge Cannon, who was a Trump appointed judge, who's crazy, anyway. She said that volume 2 shouldn't be released. Why did the Department of Justice accidentally send some of the volume 2 to her lawyer, the Department of Justice lawyer who they're prosecuting? That lawyer caught it and was like, hey, I don't think you're supposed to send this to me. He just sent it back, said he didn't look at it, but we don't know if that's the case or not. That's the type of level of incompetence. That's the Project 2025 agenda. They said replace career attorneys, career workers with these sycophants. The sycophants are incompetent. You've seen it in his cabinet. JFK, RFK Jr., Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, Kristi Noem, who else? Mark Wayne Mullin is the newest one. They don't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. Linda McMahon. I've seen them. Scott Turner. I've seen them at the oversight hearings when the senators and representatives ask them questions. They like during the headlines. Project 2025 just put them in place to destroy the agencies they're in charge of. They have no fidelity or interest because they didn't come up the ranks in them, so they really don't care. When they say destroy them, they say how fast. That's what they've been doing. They don't know what the hell they're doing. So that's the level of incompetence we have on, and it's so bad. And that is why on July 4th, when Doge officially closed and sunset, and we're trying to see what happened, multiple agencies that they fired people, and we've seen the impact of it, from them firing the Iran specialists, the specialists related to infectious diseases, just so we have this the screw worm coming out. You had all of the new Ebola experts. All of the impact of what they've done. We're feeling the impact of it. It's lower services. They don't know what they're doing. That was a scam to get access to our data. I believe that. That was a scam for Elon Musk, and I did a video on it to Elon Musk to escape accountability because he's being prosecuted by or investigated by several different agencies. It was a scam. So it was just a ruse. It was a trick. He gave Donald Trump all that money. Can I have access to the keys? And Donald Trump was like, you gave me all that money. Sure, here, Elon. And Elon, who's a South African American, who at one point, according to his brother already confessed he was an undocumented immigrant. They were in this country unlawfully. His brother already confessed that. Elon Musk, who doesn't know anything about the government, doesn't know how it works. All these private sector people, from Scott Bessent to Elon Musk to Christopher Wright, the Department of Energy Secretary, to Linda McMahon, Scott Turner at least works for the government a little bit. They don't know how government works. They don't know government's for the people. They've been spending 18 months just taking away things. Brooke Rollins is bragging about removing people from the SNAP benefits. And it's members of Congress are having to say, when you say you're proud to remove, do you realize that's children, elderly, and disabled people that you're boasting about? Why are you proud of that? Why are you smiling, dumbass? So they have no freaking know what the hell they're doing. And they're cruel people. Their job is just, they've not added to our lives. They've just taken away taxes for the rich people, taking away health care, taking away SNAP benefits, taking away Medicaid, taking away benefits for the people. That's the Republican Party. I don't know why what they do is play, this is a digression. I should digress. They identify boogeymen, whether it's trans individuals, whether it's immigrants and migrants, whether it's people of color, they say taking their job, whether it's women, whether it is socialism, whether it is Sharia law. They identify these boogeymen that are impacting these people's lives zero. Just the concept that they scaring them, the idea of Sharia law, the idea of an immigrant. There is someone who voted for Donald Trump who's in Maine. No immigrants in his town. No immigrants whatsoever. He voted for Donald Trump because of the immigration crisis at the border. Donald Trump's tariff policy messed up his business. You voted against your interests because it works. They just take these boogeymen. Because they take these boogeymen, and that's what they do. The Republicans vote for them. Meanwhile, like what happened in Oklahoma, the rich people, because of Citizens United, who put money in all these PACs and these dark money, put all these ads to convince a state that is what at the bottom when it comes to wages, when it comes to a lot of things, to vote or not show up to vote to give themselves a $15 per hour minimum wage to lift it from 7.25. They voted against that because people just didn't show up. They just never planned. Oh my goodness. I remember saw someone in my comment section say, well, Carl's Jr. closed because they had to raise the prices. That's bullshit. That's what some ad told you, because Dave's Hot Chicken, which started in California, is in my state and we have $15 an hour. Dave's Hot Chicken is in New York. They have $15 minimum wage. Dave's Hot Chicken is in Massachusetts. They have $15 minimum wage. So the lie about saying, oh, it's good, that's a lie. They tell you that. That's because they have the dark money funding all those ads. We need to get rid of Citizens United. They need to repeal that altogether. Change the Supreme Court, bring it back up, get money out of politics altogether, and maybe we might have some sort of semblance of normalcy. So that's why they vote against their interests, because they identify boogeymen. These people vote for them. And now the Oklahomas, y'all still have, like, y'all could be getting $15 per hour. You know, a bunch of them work in those places where they work is like under $15 an hour. A bunch of them are not getting $15 an hour. They know that $15 an hour helped them. But they vote against their interests time and time and time again. And that's, but money, anyway, money can't solve it, because we saw Elon try to buy that Supreme Court seat, and I think it was, what was it, Wisconsin? I can't remember, and that didn't work. And we seen David Trone try to buy a seat in Maryland twice. That didn't work. So it doesn't always work that money buys you seats. So we'll see. But Doge has been a waste of time. They're being investigated right now. There's several cases involving their access to Social Security. The administrations actually have to admit to it. Some of those Doge boys, young men, who we know from reporting, canceled some grants because they mentioned black, and the one said that black people have no value in the history. Like, there's just the ignorant dumbass. I'm not going to say young people, young kids. Some of them they know better. They got their jobs through essentially knowing somebody from knowing someone from somebody. They got their jobs through cronyism or nepotism, through word of mouth recruitment, and to have the nerves to be like anti-DEI. Meanwhile, you're sitting up there unqualified for your job, got your job because of a hookup. So identify just scraping people, getting away contracts. That's how they bulk got rid of contracts, because the law requires them to do it on an individual by individual basis. Lee Zetlin got caught during Congress lying about reviewing these cases, which is a standard, individual by individual. Got caught, busted lying. They were just saying, so on cultural basis, it mentions clean energy, Native American, African American, trans, women, all those things that they in their culture where they say these are the people that we don't like. We're getting rid of their grants, even though the standard is they have to first like not meet the grant standards. They have to give them a chance to cure. They're not even related. They try to take grants from universities because the universities they feel like didn't do enough to quell anti-Israeli, pro-Palestine protests. That had nothing to do with the cancer research. So we're going to not have cancer research because the universities didn't do something that's unrelated. They're trying to take away grants because the university has like one trans athlete. The trans community represents less than 1% of the population. Why the frick y'all have a hard on for people who really not affecting your life anyway? Cultural. You know why? It's because it allows them to brainwash the religious. That's how they get a lot of black men. That's how they get a lot of Hispanics in Texas. Because you think about it, the policies are not really for you. If you take away the religious aspect and the boogeyman aspect and the fear in them aspect, and they look at who's doing something, it's not going to be Republicans. They don't do nothing for y'all. They just give tax cuts every time they come in and tell y'all trickle down works. Trickle down hasn't worked. This is Ronald Reagan been talking about it in the 80s. Anyway, I digress. So it doesn't work. They just give these boogeymen, and they just, anyway, I lost my train of thought. That's why I needed to stay off the digression. And Donald Trump's just like destroying just the country. He sent National Guards to blue cities. Of course, Supreme Court stopped him, so he had to leave Los Angeles, had to leave Portland, had to leave Chicago, had to leave Minneapolis, and they didn't even let the troops get out. But you red states, sorry for you people living in red states, they were like, bring on the troops, because if the state asks for it, a state accepts it, they'll come. That's why in Memphis they have all those National Guard troops, and Memphis crime's been going down. When some little Doge punk got beat up, Donald Trump's like, oh, he got beat up, I'm going to send National Guard to DC, because DC is federal. We have all these National Guards troops, and that the West Virginian troops, the two West Virginia National Guardsmen who were killed by the rogue Afghan person, may not have been killed had Donald Trump not dispatched the West Virginia governor didn't send them over to DC in the first place. They'd be alive today, possibly. I don't know. You just never know. But he just does that. And so in Memphis, the National Guard shot Tyrone Johnson, and that's a case. You probably even heard about it because there's so much crazy news going on. A lot of people are talking about the young man who lost his life via drowning when a bunch of his friends in Mississippi went on a boat trip. So we'll find out what happened with Nolan. But they just do not act in their best interest. And he just sends these troops out there, and it's just, people want housing. They want lower cost of food. He promises lower cost of food, lower housing. He said, I'm going to give you affordable childcare. I'm going to increase affordability, lower prescription costs. They want lower healthcare costs. Everyone wants lower energy bill. We don't want gas prices. He's done the absolute opposite. In fact, Donald Trump's been concerned with his ballroom, pet vanity projects. He created this wall where he denigrates past presidents, decorating the various different rooms, tearing down the East Room, trying to put up an arch, having birthday parties last year, the parade, this year, the UFC fight, destroying the ellipse with that, just destroying the pool, giving no big contracts to his incompetent pool person in Mar-a-Lago, violating the process, by the way. That was then lying and getting his name on the Kennedy Center with Dor Rouge. That was also a violation. And now he's trying to get a helicopter pad. So I'm hoping they know that he acts first, he destroys first. All these things he's done, he destroyed first. He broke ground first. And then by the time you turn around and they're suing, it's too late. So I hope they stop that helicopter pad. Then he's traveling a lot because he doesn't like it here because nobody likes him. He knows nobody likes him. So that's why he's always in somebody's other country. He's been the president to go to the most games. No other president has been to many athletic games than him because he just likes to be in the limelight. He just to be on the front. He's not doing anything for you. He's golfing. He's trying to take over the DC golf course. That's in litigation as well because there's like rules you have to do. They don't follow rules. Alcatraz, all these detention centers have environmental rules, all of these ordinances and stuff like that. They're not doing. They just build it first or try to build it first. So it's a freaking colossal waste of time, the entire administration. I hope that was helpful for you. This podcast has gone on too long. It's probably like 40 minutes long, but I had a lot to say. I got it out of my chest. I think I'm satisfied. The plan is here. I don't want to talk about that because that's not really Trump related. It's kind of related to the balance of the Senate, which is tenuous. But anyway, JJ Legal, each one teach one. Share this video so more people know. Go to jjlegal.com for resources. And